I want to start today with a quote I came across in the research that, honestly, at first I thought it was a typo.
Oh,
Or maybe just, a really bad joke. But the longer I sat with it, the more I realized it's kind of the skeleton key for everything we're going to talk about.
I love those, the ones that sneak up on you. All right, lay it on me.
Okay, here it is. Alcoholism is when the drinker becomes unmanageable, not when the drinking becomes unmanageable.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah,
That is sticky. That makes you pause.
right. It sounds like something you'd hear at 2 in the morning from a guy trying to justify one more round.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you actually unpack it, it's a really profound statement about how we define problems in the human brain.
It really is. Because
Yeah.
it shifts the focus completely.
Yeah.
It's saying the disorder isn't the action itself, the drinking. It's the friction. It's the friction between that action and the person's ability to, function in their world.
So by that definition, if you could drink a gallon of whiskey a day and still be a great CEO, a present father, all of it.
You wouldn't have the ism. You'd just be, I guess, a very, very heavy drinker. The disorder is in the unmanageability of the person.
Exactly. And that right there, that's the central idea for today's deep dive. We are digging into this fascinating and, I'll be honest, a little controversial article by Ryan Collison. It's from the Money Sex Nerd blog.
It's part of his Kids Are All Right series. This one is titled, Disorder is Relative to Environment.
And just to set the stakes, this isn't just about, playing with words.
No, not at all. We're going to try and challenge how you, the listener, think about mental health diagnoses. We're talking the big three: ADHD, anxiety, depression.
And we're asking a tough question. Is the problem really in our brains? Or is the problem the fit between our brains and the world we've built?
It's like nature versus the cubicle.
Slight laugh. Nature versus the cubicle. I like that.
Yeah.
That's basically the mission today, to look at dysfunction, not as a broken part, but as a bad relationship between a person and their context.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So let's get into it. When I think of a medical disorder, my mind goes to biology. A broken leg, you get an x-ray. You can see the bone is snapped. It's objective.
Right. It doesn't matter where you are. Broken leg is a broken leg.
But that's not how mental health diagnoses work, is it?
Not in the slightest. And the source makes this distinction right at the top. We rely on the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's the Bible, so to speak.
But it's not a Bible of blood tests and brain scans.
No. You can't pee in a cup and test positive for ADHD. There's no blood draw that confirms generalized anxiety disorder.
So if there's no biological marker, no little red flag in the blood, what are they actually measuring?
They're measuring behavior, feelings, functionality. But here's the absolute picker, and this is the technical term you have to know. For something to be a disorder, the symptoms have to cause clinically significant distress or impairment. Impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning.
Clinically significant impairment. That sounds so official, so scientific.
It does.
But when you actually say it out loud, it's incredibly subjective, isn't it?
It's entirely relative. Think about those words. Impairment in occupational functioning. That assumes you have a job.
And a specific type of job.
Right. To function means to function somewhere. To be impaired means to be impaired by something.
So if you change the somewhere, if you change the environment, does the disorder just disappear?
Logically, yes. If the environment changes, the impairment might vanish. And if the impairment vanishes, then poof, the diagnosis technically no longer exists. Same person, same brain, but the disorder is gone.
The source has this perfect analogy for this. It's called the bus stop test.
Oh, I love this one.
It's so relatable because I feel like I've lived through this exact shift. Can you walk us through it?
Okay, so picture it. It's, say, 1995. You're walking past a bus stop, and there's a guy sitting there, engrossed in a paperback book, not looking up, just reading. What's your first impression?
In 95, he looks solid, like an intellectual, maybe patient. He's using his time well. It's a positive image. I'm thinking, good for him.
Exactly. He is functioning perfectly in that 1995 context.
Yeah.
Fast forward. Today, same bus stop, same guy, same paperback.
Yeah.
But everyone else around him is on a smartphone. They're checking Slack, scrolling the news, firing off emails, and he's just reading the book.
It feels different now.
What's the feeling?
It feels almost defiant or just disconnected. Like, is he ignoring his boss? Is he missing something important? It goes from intellectual to weirdly unavailable.
Weirdly unavailable. That's perfect, because in the current attention economy, That kind of deep, sustained focus on a single offline object is, you could argue, non-functional.
It creates
A
friction.
ton of friction with the expectation that you are always available.
Mm.
The behavior didn't change. The guy didn't change. The world changed around him, and his admirable traits started to look like a dysfunction.
Wow. And that's a pretty harmless example, reading a book.
Exactly. So now imagine that friction amplified. If the world demands constant scanning email, Slack, texts, and your brain is wired for deep single-task focus, well, suddenly you're impaired. You're a problem that needs to be solved.
Which brings us right to the heavyweight champion of this entire conversation, ADHD.
Absolutely.
Because if any diagnosis feels like a friction point with the modern world, this is it. The rates are just climbing and climbing.
It is the textbook case of what the source calls an environmental mismatch. We've basically medicalized a certain pattern of attention because it crashes against the walls of two specific modern institutions.
Schools and corporate offices.
Schools and corporate offices.
Okay, let's break that down. What is it about school? Because you hear about this epidemic of ADHD in kids, but maybe we should be talking about the epidemic of, I don't know, boring classrooms.
Well, think about how a school is designed. The source called it industrial-era compliance. You put 30 kids in neat little rows. You tell them to sit still, face forward, and just listen to one person talk for 45 minutes straight. Then a bell rings, and you have to switch topics. Instantly.
It's an assembly line. It was literally designed to create factory workers.
It was. Factory workers and bureaucrats for the 19th and 20th centuries. The system rewards low impulse, high compliance, and an ability to tolerate extreme boredom.
And if a kid's brain just isn't built for that, if they need to move or they get distracted by something out the window.
We say they have a deficit. We say they're disordered. But, and this is where the source gets really interesting, what if we look at other environments? Places where those exact ADHD traits aren't just neutral, but they're actually superpowers.
I love this part because it just flips the whole narrative. First on the list from the source is emergency response.
Yes. Think about an ER doctor or a paramedic. What skills do they need?
To be able to see everything at once.
Rapid attention shifting, constantly scanning the room, high stimulus tolerance. If an ER doc hyper-focused on one patient for 2 hours and ignored everything else, people would die.
So in that context, distractibility is actually situational awareness.
It's a survival skill. You want them to be distracted by the beeping machine over there. Or look at entrepreneurship. There's a reason so many founders self-identify with ADHD traits.
That comfort with chaos.
The hunger for risk, the intense bursts of energy. That's literally the startup life cycle, followed by the inevitable crash.
And creative work, too, the whole idea of divergent thinking.
Connecting dot A to dot Z without needing to go through B, C, and D. In a classroom, that's not following instructions. In an art studio, it's genius.
This all sounds like the hunter versus farmer hypothesis.
It's the same idea, just through an evolutionary lens. The source leans on this hard. For 99% of human history, we weren't farmers sitting in neat rows.
We were hunters and gatherers.
Exactly. And if you're a hunter, sitting still and staring at one tree for 8 hours is a terrible strategy.
You'd starve.
Or get eaten.
Right. You need to be scanning. You need to notice the rustle in the grass, the change in the wind. You need to be impulsive enough to throw the spear now, not after, filling out a risk assessment form.
Slight laugh. So the argument is that the ADHD brain is a hunter brain we forced into a farmer's chair.
Or a factory worker seat. And then we act surprised when they squirm. We say, your brain is broken. The source suggests, no, your brain is fine. It's just 10,000 years out of date for this particular classroom.
So it's not a malfunction, it's a mismatch. I want to pivot, though, to something that feels less like a trait and more like pure suffering.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
Anxiety.
This is a heavy one. The numbers on youth anxiety are, they're just skyrocketing. And it's so easy for people to dismiss it as kids being fragile.
Right. And the standard response is treatment, therapy, meds. But the source asks this really sharp question about how we even define generalized anxiety disorder.
The DSM definition is key here. It's defined as excessive anxiety and worry.
And there's that word again, excessive. Excessive relative to what?
That is the million-dollar question. I mean, if you live in a perfectly safe, stable, predictable world, then, yeah, worrying all the time is definitely excessive. It's a malfunction. Your internal smoke alarm is screaming, but there's no fire.
But we don't live in that world. The source lists the actual stressors a young person is facing today, and it's a pretty grim list.
It really is. We're talking about climate projections that look apocalyptic, political instability, economic precarity where owning a home seems like a fantasy, the threat of AI automating your career before it even starts.
When you lay it all out like that, if you're a 20-year-old staring down that future, is constant worry really excessive? Or is it just paying attention?
That's the rational response argument. If your house is on fire, screaming is not a disorder, it's an accurate perception of reality.
There was a line in the article that just gave me chills. It was something like, the kid who's anxious about the future might not have a disorder. They might just be the only one actually looking at the data.
It suggests that for some, the problem isn't a broken alarm. The alarm is working perfectly. The issue is that the house is actually getting hot. And by pathologizing that anxiety, we're kind of gaslighting them about the state of the world.
And that connects directly to depression, too. When we see depression rates go up, the default question is always, what's wrong with the kids?
When maybe we should be asking, what's wrong with the world we're making them live in?
It goes back to that evolutionary gap again.
It always does. We are primates. We evolved over millennia for a very, very specific kind of life. The source calls it Tribe A.
Tribe A, what's that look like?
Tight-knit communities. You knew everyone. You had a clear role. You were physically active all day, outside in nature. You had real social support.
And now, we live in Tribe B.
Now we live in Tribe B, which is often isolated, sedentary, indoors. Our social ties are weak. A lot of work feels meaningless, and our relationships are mediated by algorithms designed to make us angry or envious.
So you take an animal that evolved for Tribe A, for connection and movement, and you drop it into Tribe B, isolation and stillness. And
it gets depressed.
yeah.
And the source argues that maybe the depression isn't a malfunction. Maybe it's the brain's check engine light. It's a perfectly healthy signal saying, warning, this environment is hostile to your basic biological needs. Stop this.
But instead of changing the environment, we just try to find a way to switch off the light.
We treat the brain as if it's misfiring, instead of seeing it as accurately responding to a bleak context. It changes the story from, my life isn't working for me, to, I am broken.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate for a second, because this can feel like a really slippery slope.
It can.
If I'm a parent listening, and my kid is failing school or can't get out of bed, I don't really care about hunter-gatherer theory. I just want them to get help, and a diagnosis is the gateway to that help.
You're 100% right. And the source is very, very clear about this. This is not an argument to throw out the DSM or to say that mental illness isn't real. Diagnosis performs a crucial, necessary function in our current society.
Let's talk about that function. What is the work that a diagnosis actually does for someone?
Well, first and foremost, it grants access. You can't get extra time on a test without a diagnosis. You can't get medication that might genuinely help you hold a job without a diagnosis. It's a key. It unlocks resources.
And it also reduces shame. That has to be a huge one.
Massive. Absolutely massive. If you just think you're lazy or stupid because you can't focus, that destroys you. But if a doctor says you have a dopamine regulation issue, suddenly it's not a character flaw, it's biology. That can be incredibly liberating.
It takes the moral failure out of the equation.
Completely.
So we have this tension. Diagnosis saves lives. But the source argues it also creates its own kind of friction. What's the downside?
The downside is that it locates the problem entirely inside the individual.
It points the finger at the person, not the context.
Exactly. It says, you are the thing that needs to be fixed to fit into the world. Instead of asking, how can the world be more accommodating to different kinds of brains?
So the school doesn't have to change its teaching methods if the problem is just that 10% of the kids have a disorder. It lets the environment off the hook.
It does. And on a personal level, it can become a limiting identity. If you're told you have a disorder, you might lower your expectations for yourself. You might stop looking for those environments where you would actually thrive, that ER, that startup, because you've been told you are fundamentally impaired.
So the really crucial question isn't, is ADHD real or is anxiety real?
No.
It's what work is this diagnosis doing for me or for my child right now? And is that work useful?
Pragmatism. It's about what helps you navigate the world versus what traps you in a label.
Let's zoom out to that kids are all right timeline. We hear it all the time from older generations where we didn't have all this ADHD and anxiety back in the 70s. Kids are just soft now.
Ah, yes, the back in my day argument. But the source makes this undeniable point. The environment has changed more in the last 20 years than it did in the previous 200.
That feels like a bold claim. Is it?
Think about it. The iPhone is barely 15 years old.
Oh.
Social media, the 24-hour news cycle, the gig economy, the total erosion of an offline life. The world a teenager lives in today is alien territory compared to 1990.
And we just expect human brains to update like software.
But evolution doesn't work that fast. Biological change takes thousands of years. Technological change takes, what, 10 minutes? We are running Paleolithic hardware on Silicon Valley software.
So when we see a struggling kid, or a struggling adult for that matter, we really have two ways to look at them, two frames.
The first is the diagnostic frame.
Which says, this person has a disorder inside them that is impeding their functioning. We need to treat the person.
And the second is the environmental frame.
Which says, this person has traits that are mismatching their current context. We need to look at the context.
It's the exact same person, the exact same behaviors. But the implication, the solution, changes completely.
And the environmental frame is just harder.
Oh, it's so much harder. It's way easier to prescribe a pill than it is to redesign the entire school system or fix the economy or cure our addiction to social media.
It forces us to take some responsibility for the world we've built.
And it forces us to ask that really tough question. What changed about the environment that is making normal, natural human variation start to look like pathology?
So where does this leave us? If you're listening to this and you feel like you're constantly swimming upstream, what's the takeaway? You can't just quit your job and go live in the woods.
No, you can't. That's the reality. But I think the core concept to hold on to is to stop seeing disorder as a static thing inside of you, like a kidney stone.
And start seeing it as a relationship.
Exactly. A relationship between your unique traits and your environment's demands. And the good news is relationships can be managed.
It empowers you to look at your life and ask, where's the friction coming from, and how can I reduce it?
Maybe you aren't broken. Maybe you just need to stop trying to be a farmer when you're a hunter and find a place where hunting is valued.
Or maybe the anxiety isn't a sickness to be numbed, but a signal that you need to change your media diet, or maybe even your circumstances.
It's all about seeking a better fit. And that's a hopeful thought, I think. You're not necessarily broken. You might just be out of context.
You aren't broken, you're just out of context.
Yeah.
I think that is the perfect place to wrap things up. This has been a deep dive into Ryan Collison's analysis on Money, Sex, Nerd. Thank you so much for breaking this down with me.
It was a pleasure. It's always good to question the water we're swimming in.
Absolutely. We'll catch you on the next deep dive. And in the meantime, take care of your context, everyone.